Good morning, and thank you for staying with us. You're listening to Smooth 98.1, Smooth Breakfast with me, Valentine.
And Fola, good morning.
Good morning. And joining us this morning to analyze the stories inside of Freshly Pressed 91, we have Devoe joining us. Good morning, Devoe.
Good morning, Lagos.
Welcome.
Yes, so Eku ni Bajel.
Seriously, though?
It cannot spoil with these rains. Eku flood.
And we have Mr.
Yeah.
G Quest himself joining us at Bolahan. Good morning.
Morning, Fola. Morning, Valentine.
Morning,
and
good
morning,
morning.
Lagos.
Welcome. Join the conversation by sending us messages on WhatsApp. That number is 0809 444 0981 for WhatsApp messages, 0809 444 0981.
And you can tweet at Smooth91FM. Hashtag is Freshly Pressed 91.
Yes. Our first story is from the Daily Times. NCAA investigates helicopter landing on highway. Now, according to this story, the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority says it has begun a full-scale investigation to ascertain the viral video of the helicopter that landed on the Benin-Ore Expressway on Sunday. So when this story hits I won't say tabloids, social media, first of all, people were spreading the rumor that a certain rich man sent a helicopter to pick up his girlfriend.
A boss man.
In traffic, but it's the story is different. Now, take us through the story. Give us the real details and what transpired before NCAA had to, weigh into this conversation.
Well, it was the typical debate over boss levels versus illegality. And as it happened, which everybody came to hear of a story, which came via video of a chopper that landed somewhere along the Benin-Ore Way. And I think there were many various reports from a gentleman picking up, rescuing his girlfriend from traffic. There were issues of an expat who was saved because he had to meet up the airport. And then finally, I think recently another gentleman has been identified. However, the NCAA, who is the regulatory body for aviation within the country, that's the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, is investigating the incidents. General Manager, Mr. Sam Adu-Boroye, confirmed this development yesterday. Now, they do know, they said to their own understanding and knowledge, the helicopter was owned by Tropical Arctic Logistics Limited, registered 5NBVQ, while the aircraft type was an AW139. And they're looking into why the helicopter had to make an unscheduled diversion to pick up someone. Really, there's not much to this story because helicopters and aircraft likewise are regulated. Nobody just gets up and flies off into the air.
Especially dropping on a federal road, for instance, in the thick of traffic.
Yes. The funny thing is, no matter the location, coordinates are always sent to air traffic control. Now, even if they must make an emergency landing, I think the NCAA actually has all the information that it needs. There are more serious issues within our aviation industry for them to address. And if
shouldn't make them overlook this.
Yes, if there was a contravention of the regulation, they are, like I said, they've already stated who did it. They know exactly who to deal with, and we will see to the end of this.
Is there a law that has been broken here? Is it confirmed that indeed this aircraft made a detour or made an unscheduled landing?
Yeah, it's NCAA speaking. Like they said, it was an unscheduled diversion, meaning the coordinates in terms of the navigation
that control did not have the coordinates of the landing.
No, it was unscheduled. So at the time that it diverted from what was expected, obviously it must have communicated because the law is simple. I mean, if you divert, it has implications on other flights scheduled, etc. So they obviously the company would explain itself, or else obviously I'm sure there'll be penalties that they'll have to undertake. As to whether it is a good thing to do, yes, it is a boss move.
But it's not a good thing to do.
No, hold on. What I want to say is that let's put this in proper perspective.
Yes,
As
please.
our nation develops. Just like at some point we used to have yellow taxis, and then we now started having advanced technology, cabs for hire, taxis.
Helicopters for hire.
Now it will get to the stage where we begin to have commercial helicopters.
It has gotten to that
yes,
stage.
that can taxi people to locations they want to go
It's
to.
already
It's a
existing in
matter
Lagos.
of propensity, you know. I want to go to the market. I need to escape the big traffic between Ikeja and the island. I hop, right?
Are there facilities that would provide for these things to happen? Because you can't just say, oh, you're stuck in traffic, or because you have access to a helicopter and you can afford it, then you hop into one and land right in the middle of a tarred
I'm
federal
sure
road.
there are regulations to that.
Let's call it what it is. It's bad behavior. It's unlawful. It's illegal. Do not land a helicopter where people are. First of all, why do you think people, even in movies, you see people stooping down?
We don't know that yet.
Hang on, just for a second. I mean, you see people stooping down just to avoid the propeller, the blades, right?
Yes.
It's a risk.
It's a safety issue as well.
Exactly.
That's
So-
why I'm saying that everything here is known. There's nothing unknown in this issue.
Okay.
If the operator, I doubt, because they operate with licenses, and I'm sure the operator would not have wanted to forfeit his license for any reason. So when the full facts come out,
Yes.
we'll
According
find
to
it.
Nigerian
Yes.
Civil Aviation Authority, we'll wait to see that detailed report like they promised.
Indeed.
From the Premium Times publication, we have this story that reads, Sanusi commends Buhari for focusing on poverty eradication. So the Emir of Kano, Muhammad Sanusi II, on Tuesday commended President Muhammad Buhari through a speech a letter that he sent through one of his aides to the president for a speech that was credited to Buhari declaring war on poverty. He said it was well received nationally and internationally. Now, in this message that was sent by the Emir to the presidency, he highlighted a few issues, touching on areas of economy, power, petroleum, debt service and revenue issues, as well as tax. Essential points here of note, he says that the government really needs to take proactive steps to reduce the amounts they spend on subsidies, petroleum subsidies, to ensure that Nigerians actually still bear the brunt of paying high price or high cost for fuel. And I like how this report was captioned by the Premium Times, because a lot of the other tabloids had the headline that almost insinuated, or rather the headline for most of the tabloids read, Nigeria on the verge of bankruptcy, and credited it to Sanusi. But that wasn't essentially the message. But take us through the story, Devoe.
Okay, I'd like to change the headline to Sanusi Vanguard, because I'll ask everyone to take a good look at this article. It is very instructive. The Emir has been known to speak very instructively as regards the economy, something of which he is well versed in. He had commended the president's recent speech declaring the war on poverty as commendable and well received, both nationally and internationally, obviously because of our role and our position, and this fact that we have a huge poverty issue that we need to deal with. Now, he was speaking at the third National Treasury Workshop that took place in Kano by the Office of the Accountant General, who hailed from Kano, which was why he attended, because he said most times anytime he speaks on national matters, sometimes it can be seen as criticism. However, he started by saying that that the war on poverty would be difficult, and that he would commend any government that will take the painful decisions to free up resources that are required for social amenities like education, health, and infrastructure. Now, the challenge which he was highlighting was in twofold. One, he said the subsidy provision for fuel was going to be a challenge, and if you remember, I think one of the offices came out that we had spent like 0.7 trillion in just 1 year alone on subsidy payment. And subsidy, as you know, is the difference between the landing price of fuel and then the price that we pay at the pump. Now, he said this, even in his time when he was central bank governor, that the federal government earned about 16 billion from oil, $16 billion, and spent about earned about $8 billion from oil, and spent about 8.2 on subsidies, meaning there was a deficit, obviously, which is not sustainable. Now, likewise, he was saying that he recommended that the federal government should actually reduce the subsidy payments and start maybe pay like 30% 1 year, and then the next year in graduating terms of 10%,
Yes.
reduce it until they pay nothing. Obviously, this will come as a pinch, and he's saying that Nigerians should gear up to be able to carry this cost. On the other hand, he also said the subsidy on electricity, which is another major social amenity that affects everyone, is something that the government needs to look at, and that the government needs to allow people to pay cost-reflective tariffs.
Which
Remember,
we've been talking about
yes,
as one of the solutions.
the investors and both the operators have always complained that they're operating at a loss, which makes it a failure ab initio. Now, he made reference to Cote d'Ivoire, that in Cote d'Ivoire, even the poor people, those who have lower privilege, pay cost-reflective tariffs, which enable them to come out of poverty.
Which is why, which is because they're having 24 hours power,
Yes.
lights that we do not have.
So in both instances, what he's saying is that the inadequacy is coming from the fact that we're not paying enough. And I think it's clear to anyone, and it takes the government, and I have to say this government has been able to bite the bullet in the past. If you remember, when they came in, they took the fuel price from 97 to 145, which was seen as, oh, we're going to die and fall inside a hole. No, we're still surviving.
Right.
And either way, Nigerians are still paying the cost in their own supply of private amenities with borehole, generators, solar systems, etc. and co. So if the government can come together and restructure the pricing as regards electricity and fueling, I think it would put the country on a path of recovery.
All right. Thank you very much. Tony sent in a message on WhatsApp. It says, Val, you can't say it's bad behavior unless you know the immediate circumstances of the landing. What if it was a health emergency? Let the authorities investigate and search or reach their findings without judgment in the media. Thank you, Tony. But yes, bad behavior can be, acted upon with good intentions. I'm not ruling out the intentions behind it. I do not know the full details of that, which we are waiting for the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority to release. And once that comes out, then we can review the entire incident. This one here from Cisco.
Cisco says the federal government should look into more important issues, like the mayhem being unleashed on citizens by Boko Haram, and talk about helicopters. In Port Harcourt, helicopters pick up their workers from their homes.
Oh, please
From home.
say it again.
If you do have an approval, I think there's no problem. There's
it's
nothing wrong with
licensed.
that. It's all licensed.
If you have a helipad, that's a different
Yeah,
conversation.
exactly.
No, helicopters can land
Livy
in
from
open terrains.
Livy from Festac Town says, for me, wide investigation for the aircraft. Is there any law that says aircraft shouldn't land on the roads? You guys should educate me. Come on.
Permit.
There's a traffic
permission.
code.
Permits, code.
Oluzil says, Val, waiting Val they talk. The area was cleared before landing now. Do you know how many people now have chopper goals? Good to have you.
Bust this.
Thank you, Oluzil. Yinka says, Val, the only bad habit I see here with respect to the chopper landing on the prestigious federal government road is that it throws normal, already disappearing middle income earners like me into a state of mind. I'll keep asking myself, why am I not rich?
Yo.
This is Nigeria
It will-
where anything goes. This is the same country a certain big man's daughter jumped the long INEC registration queue somewhere in Lekki to register and go away. Guess what? There was a police with her. So what's the difference between that and the London story? Did INEC investigate it? I beg. When you're rich, you're rich.
It's
Okay.
getting worse. That's the difference.
It is.
Yeah.
So let's move on very quickly to touch on this story. This one reads VAT to be 7.5% next year, according to ex-minister. So the former finance minister Zainab Ahmed made a statement or disclosure yesterday at a forum organized by Bloomberg. Take us through the story and really why she has made this statement on education.
Well, the story itself is a very, very short story,
Yes,
but there's a lot of back story to this. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation in the past whether to increase the tax rate or widen the tax bracket or so.
Tax net, yes.
Yeah, the tax net. So, I mean, it seems as if it's been concluded now that the government is going to increase the VAT from 5% to 7.5% come 2020. So, invariably, those who are already paying taxes will be burdened with paying more taxes, which is 5 to 7.5%.
But isn't it too soon to come to conclusions based on this?
well-
Because we haven't seen or been told
Yes.
essentially that broadening the tax net has been concluded yet. We haven't seen the dividends of that move to see if that solution in itself did not work or achieve the goals that the federal government intended it to achieve from the
Well,
start.
when you're talking about broadening the tax net, part of broadening the tax net initiative was the VADES and the voluntary asset declaration that was implemented last year. And if the government really did achieve its objective, they really didn't, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, they were only able to increase the numbers of people paying taxes by about less than 10 million or so was the number. It grew to about 14 million or so. So the increase wasn't really that significant. And when you look at it as an impact on the government revenue as well, it's pretty much very little.
Isn't it too early to judge? I mean, this is what we're getting into July. It's supposedly meant to stretch for till the end of the year because there's a new target for tax recovery this year, right? That's meant to rise from 5 trillion to 8 trillion.
Yeah, but when you, according to this article now, the article did actually specify as well that we didn't actually hit our revenue target, and we fell short of it. The revenue target was about 55%. So I mean, when we're having our budget and we're not hitting the target, we're not hitting how much we're meant to be raising from our revenues. Obviously something is wrong somewhere. Obviously something needs to be done somewhere, and part of that is obviously what they're looking at now, which is increasing the tax net. And of course, when we talk about VAT, Nigeria actually pays one of the lowest VAT across the world. We've talked about this several times. Anyway, Ghana pays about 12%. We have Kenya paying about 16%.
But Ghana sees their resources put into good use. Nigeria does.
That's what Nigeria needs to do. You need to now ask for it for it. And the problem that we've always had in the past, of course, is that there's always been a divide between the people and the government, where we ask no questions what government is doing with our money, because a lot of money or income is being generated from oil. And as such, if government isn't actually dipping their hands in your pocket, then you don't want to know how they're spending their money. But now when you start to pay more from your pocket, then you would start to ask for accountability. And VAT, just one last thing to add is when we're talking about VAT, anyway, VAT isn't on basic items. There's no VAT on food, there's no VAT on books. You're only talking about luxury items. You're talking about value added taxes on luxury items.
What you're saying is this specifically does not affect price of goods and services in the market. It's just on luxury goods.
It's mostly on luxury goods. Food, you don't pay VAT on food.
Interesting. Bolu from Lagos says PMS is over 400 naira per liter, and in certain countries, but they do not have to buy fuel to provide their own electricity. I don't see the connection. James from Marine Beach says, even if I had to bring a sheep to take me or a loved one from traffic, I'll do it. Solve the traffic issues. Look at the Lagos Badagry Expressway. I heard that traffic kept them down for over 2 hours. The traffic.
It looked bad.
It looked really
Fix the
bad.
roads.
Dekunle shares a joke. He says the pilot dropped his phone. I had to learn to pick it.
Yeah.
Alicia says, good morning, Valentine, Fola, and the guests. I do not agree with you, Val. Isn't it because of the leaders and their no value on lives mentality that caused this? Why are the roads bad? That Benin Road has been bad for years and nothing has been done. Please, helicopter, land well. All right, let's move on. Our next story is from the Punch newspaper. Jersey in Ireland gives conditions for return of 82 billion naira Abacha loot. So the Jersey Island, where the funds that were transferred through the United States into Jersey being in the United Kingdom, a part of the Channel Islands. They said that discussions are ongoing with the federal government to repatriate to Nigeria the 211 million pounds looted by the former military dictator, General Sani Abacha. Your thoughts on this, Bolan?
Well, let me start by just laughing a little bit in Chinese, because because the reason for that is, I remember quite a few weeks back when the president said that he was going to be making requests and that money should be repatriated unconditionally. And I did mention then as well that I would like to know how the president intends to do this, simply because money that is no longer within your reach or in your pocket doesn't belong to you.
You can't be giving conditions.
You cannot be giving. You cannot be giving. You can be giving conditions exactly.
You can, because it was stolen from Nigeria's coffers.
It was stolen from Nigeria's coffers, yes, but then Nigeria didn't actually go about investigating it,
Because
and the
they
money.
did not know. It was the US that went into that investigation.
Exactly.
And
So,
that the funds were.
so how can you now come
So-
back and tell me that they should return the money unconditionally?
Because if you realize that somebody stole money from you, you ask for that money back.
Valentine, you don't have the right to that at the moment. Yes, what you will do is to appeal to them, but you
Please, but we
cannot.
lost our
You
money
you
back.
you will have to appeal
Mm.
because at the end of the day, there are costs that have gone into the recovery of this money.
And there's been money realized from these said funds that have been kept in the treasury or the bank accounts, or that where this money was stored for over 20 years.
Yes.
That has been incurred over interest
I
for that
agree.
period of time.
I agree. Yes,
which
of
does not
course.
come back to Nigeria.
Of course, it
anyway.
doesn't come back to Nigeria, but the bottom line is that you do not dictate or call the shot on this.
I see.
At the end of the day, you have to sit on the negotiating table and negotiate. And that is exactly what the practice director, law officers of the department in Guernsey was saying. He was saying that yes, there has been communication with the Nigerian government because Punch sent an email to them and they responded and said yes, there has been communication, and they were asking about the second question was how are they going to return the money, but they didn't actually disclose that because there's still ongoing talks currently taking place with that then. But they have said that the communication is ongoing, but they haven't actually come around to negotiate. So Nigeria needs to negotiate.
Hopefully,
And
yes, the larger chunk will come back.
exactly,
Hopefully.
that's just it. We're just hoping that we get the larger chunk of the money.
Thank you very much, Balaho. Emma from Akoka sent the message on WhatsApp. Says, very good move. The devil is in the details. If indeed the chopper was on the wrong side of the traffic and aviation laws, then the appropriate persons have to be sanctioned before it becomes a precedent, a coup on scheduled diversion.
Yeah.
More stories, please.
All right, moving on to the Daily Times, and this should interest you. So there are indications that President Buhari may send the list of his ministerial list to the Senate next month, according to investigations by The Punch. A former minister who served in the first term of Buhari's government said he believed that the president would send the list in order to avoid the mistake of the past when he waited for 6 months to appoint ministers in the first term. The SGF, the headline here says, why Buhari's ministerial list is delayed.
For all the betting companies that exist, this is the biggest lottery question. When is the ministerial list coming out? I'd just like to state that in this article, the person speaking, the first half of the article, was a former minister. Former, that's the operative word, meaning he's no longer in office. So he's speaking in personal capacity. We need to get that. But based on his hindsight, he was stating that obviously that the president would, he expects that the president would avoid the mistake, not that he would, and that he intends that he's also aware that the National Assembly, who needs to approve the list, is going on a second break on July the 2nd. Remember, they just resumed from 1, and I think this should be their summer break. It's on for 2 months, from July 26th to sometime late September. Yes, it's a long one. Now, he said that he knows that he would send, he should send it before then. However, even though the APC is controlling the Congress, he doesn't think that it would be cost effective to summon all the National Assembly to come back just to approve the ministers, because that would be another not even welcome back package 2.0. Now, that's his own view. Now, when the paper spoke to the presidency, they said the presidency was mute once again on when the presidency would send the list. That by the time they made calls out to the special assistant on National Assembly matters, that was Senator Itai, and he declined to comment, and that he mentioned that when the National Assembly resumes, they will proceed on their second break July the 2nd, and he wondered why people were mounting pressure since the president had said that he would send the list out. Now, I would have to say this: we need to manage our expectations in this country. Will the presidency send this list in time? Look back in history. The answer is blowing in the wind. You cannot really expect what you have never had. End of story.
All right.
People do change.
Messages on YouTube. Ronke Diney says, I
That word has a new
I
definition.
pay VAT when I buy food from restaurants. Things are just going to get more expensive
That's
without
for the
any
service.
compensation in terms of development. That's from Ronke.
That's for the service. You pay VAT for the service.
Moving on, Dollar from New Telegraph here. This is quite interesting. On insecurity, police deploy specialized dogs to railway stations.
Not the ones that INEC bought, Abi.
No.
I just wanted to be sure. We didn't see those ones.
Did you see
Sha.
those ones?
About 150 million.
Yeah.
Anyway, addressing officers and personnel during the former deployment of the K9 component of the Operation Puff Adder at the force headquarters in Abuja yesterday, the IG of Police, Mr. Mohammed Adamu, said the initiative is to ensure crime prevention and detection along railway corridors.
Yes, well, this is quite an interesting article and an interesting take from the police. I mean, we're talking about preventing crime along the railway corridors, and we've introduced canine dogs, which are meant to, the whole idea of having canine dogs are meant to detect explosives, ammunitions, and also narcotics along the railway corridors. And of course, the primary mandate of the police officers that will be manning or handling the canine dogs is meant to be surveillance, detection, and apprehension of criminals along the railway corridors. But I'm a bit perplexed as to the reason behind, securing our railways, because I mean, if I would go back, I don't think we had security issues as major issues along the railway corridors. Hold on, Valentine. We have a lot of kidnapping cases along the motorways.
Yeah.
We have a lot of armed robberies, banditries that is occurring quite a lot on the roads.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of criminal issues, crime issues on the road compared to talking about railways. When we're talking about the railways, how many kilometers of railway tracks do we currently have in Nigeria that is actually utilized?
From my little understanding,
Yes.
I know that rail tracks usually run through remote areas and run through bushes, forests sometimes, in rare cases. Other cases, but that doesn't rule out the fact. So it's not necessarily about the speed of the train itself that maybe prevents attacks, so to speak.
Yes.
But you wouldn't rule out the need to have a very good security apparatus installed at the railway station.
I think the issue is what's happening
What's the
now and our
percentage?
current needs. For
Yeah,
instance,
exactly.
if you look
Priorities.
at the Kaduna to Abuja railway route,
Yes.
now we realized a couple of months ago there was a report about how more Nigerians are opting to take the rail because Kaduna to Abuja road
is very unsafe.
Has become very, very unsafe.
So how about
opting to go by rail?
Yeah. So how about spending more money on the Abuja Kaduna Express Road,
And
ensuring that you securing that road.
Yeah. So while all that is happening, secure the railways first of all.
You secure the railways,
Yeah.
but when you're solving issues, you look at that with the highest priorities, and it's a funding issue. If you're underfunded when you're talking about security issues, then you look at the most affected areas and
put
your resources in there. So when you're talking about this K9, I'll wait and see how many of these K9 dogs people would actually see on at the railways.
Well, okay, so in premium times, Nigeria, worst African country in open defecation and second globally. This is according to a report made by the Premium Times.
Yes, this report is a report that has been in the system for quite a while now. I mean, quite a lot of us do know that Nigeria is one of the worst places when we're talking about open defecation. And the report actually says as well that we have about 47 million Nigerians, which is about 24%, that still practice open defecation. And there's no need, of course, we do know the essence of open defecation. That's because, of course, there not sufficient. We don't have sufficient public toilets to use in our market and our motor parks. I mean, the report also does say that it's only about 12% of the Nigerian marketplaces and motor parks that does have a public toilet in it, and of course 0%. And of course, the importance of having clean sanitation, clean water, and a very clean place is if you do have open defecation all around, of course, that you have a lot of issues with diseases,
Like
Sorry,
cholera,
what is
pneumonia.
defecation? Some people don't know what that means.
Well, open defecation means that you just actually
Number two.
You're
Yeah.
doing the number
Doing-
two in public.
is
That's
it
your-
is it
you're
only
passing-
the number
you're-
2?
you're
You're just
passing
passing your
feces.
feces in
Or
public.
urine in
Yes.
public.
Yeah,
Mm.
and so therefore, when you pass your feces in public places, of course, the water system it doesn't
Leaks
actually
into
go.
the sewage.
Yeah, the
Pollution.
sewage is pollution.
Air pollution too.
Toxic.
Very toxic. Adi on Twitter sent in his message. He says VAT is not only on luxury goods, VAT is applied on almost all manufactured goods and virtually all services. So pay more with the VAT increase. Government should widen the tax net before increasing the VAT. Very shortly before we go, James from Marine Beach says, even if they have made ministers or they've been made ministers since the very first day of swearing in, nothing will still happen. Nigeria will still remain the same. The final one here, please add your names to your message. Bukola says, my question is, at the risk of sounding ignorant, is the balance sheet of the country accessible to all? How is the cash flow allocated? Are the expenses all reasonable, e.g. salaries of the House of Assembly? We shouldn't be taxed extra, in my opinion. What we need is appropriation of the inflows and innovation with all our natural resources in this country. A special thanks to you, our analysts, for stepping in this morning, and Bolaho, Mr. G Quest on Twitter, Devoe at Devoe Okorie on Twitter, and thank you to everyone who sent in messages on WhatsApp, YouTube, and Twitter. We appreciate you, or we apologize for not being able to go through most of your messages.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Next, we have sports inside of the locker room. Good morning.